Woo! We got the terrible towels today. Pittsburgh Steelers, let's go! Actually, this is kind of a shirt, I'll be honest with you. This is not a towel, but so we call it the terrible shirt. I like the shirt though, man. It ain't terrible. We'll call it the fantastic terrible shirt. How about that? But what's cool and what's going on, man? I hope you guys are doing well. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to be talking about this team, doing a roster breakdown, free agency strategy. What should they do? Do they keep Russell Wilson? Did they keep Justin Fields? So many interesting conversations. What do they do with the quarterback position? I mean, my goodness. Did they get Aaron Rodgers? Who knows? There's going to be a couple things we have to talk about. So we'll go into all that, and then we'll go to a 7-round mock draft and diagnose what to do to get the Pittsburgh Steelers to a Super Bowl. Let's go on to the roster discussion and start off with the offensive tackles. You got your two bookends, hopefully, of the future. Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu. Now, Fautanu did get injured in that Denver game playing right tackle. Broderick Jones has struggled at times. I will say he got better as the season went along, but there's still too many times where he gets beat to those edges, and you think he needs to work on maybe the lateral ability a little bit more. But I do like Broderick Jones still. Hopefully he can develop going into year number 3. This is going to be a key for him, and just hopefully that trajectory keeps building upon, getting those building blocks together and getting better and better. Absolutely going to be critical for this offensive line. But Fautanu and Jones going to be more than likely your starters going into next season. Dan Moore, he's definitely outperformed where he got drafted, right? He was a mid-round draft pick, and he's somebody that has scrapped and worked, and I give him all the credit for that. I do think he ends up getting a job elsewhere, looking for a starting gig, and hopefully getting a nice contract too with that. Now, the depth here, Calvin Anderson, Doug Nestor, Dylan Cook, you need a little bit more depth. So I would definitely say you're going to have to maybe bring back Calvin Anderson, / bring a veteran in here to give you a little bit more depth, especially if you do let go of Dan Moore in this room. Other than that, though, this is more of a free agency need, not a draft need. On to the interior of the offensive line, and it is a good one. It really is. Even with the injury of James Daniel, unfortunately, he tore his Achilles early in the season, and he's still rehabbing from that, so that's going to be something we'll have to watch out for. I think he's more than likely, with the emergence of Mason McCormick, I think he's going to get a job elsewhere. Pittsburgh, I mean, they hit on McCormick, another jackrabbit out there. Let's go, those jackrabbits. They're good players. But yeah, they got a solid interior. Zach Frazier, major hit in this draft. So if there's one takeaway from this past draft is that they've found some studs on the interior. Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick. Hopefully Fautanu ends up getting healthy and being a stud for them too. Their offensive line looking better and better. Frazier, he's an all-pro type center. I'm telling you right now, I did a film breakdown early on him in the season, and I am just so impressed with this guy. He's a grappling, hooking, rustling machine up there on that interior, and he can move, man. So he is going to be a beast for the long haul. Just got to stay healthy in those things. But McCormick, I expect him to fill right in that right guard position. Left guard, Isaac Samalu. I know I've heard discussions on letting him go, being a cap casualty. I wouldn't. I think he's still a solid player. I mean, he's not an elite guard, but you need guys who are just solid and steady, and that's what he is. So keep him around. He's not a huge cap hit or anything like that, and you got money. If you needed money, then sure, but ultimately, they're in a good position. So this interior doesn't need a whole ton of changes in terms of starters. You roll in next season with McCormick, Frazier, Samalu. Keep Ryan McCollum as a good swing center. Nate Herbig will be the question. He's another guy rehabbing this season from injury. He got early on in August. But we'll see. Remember with the Herbig brothers, maybe keep him around on the cheap. He shouldn't be super expensive to bring back either. So if you want to keep him as a swing guard, Spencer Anderson, another swing guard on this interior, it's in a good position. Maybe you draft somebody in the late rounds to develop in that left guard position. Overall, not a huge grand scheme need. Muth! On to the tight end room here. And Pat Freiermuth, he's a solid tight end. He's not an elite tight end, but he's a good tight end. He's a tough-nosed guy. I did see a few more drops this season from Muth than typical. However, once again, this is not an area that I would say you look at replacing. You got Darnell Washington, who's actually had a nice season. You got Connor Hayward. Michael Pruler is a free agent. I don't know if he's going to be back. Anyway, this is not a huge need. It's like a late round, get a little bit more depth type of throw. Besides that, it's not something they have to spend a whole ton of money on or anything like that. On to the wide receiver room, which this is an area they need to improve this offseason big time. George Pickens, really good football player, but a really frustrating football player. You know what I mean? He's the guy where it's like, you throw him the ball, it gets intercepted, and you know what? Oh, you expect him to go chase after the guy? No, he's going to go tackle the DB instead. You know what I mean? I don't understand stuff sometimes with Pickens, but he is a good football player. He is going into a contract year as well, so those are going to be some tricky scenarios. I don't know if they're going to bring him back. that diva mentality, whatever. Maybe it's overblown. I don't like to try to get into the personal stuff too much. We shall see with Pickens. Good football player, but some of those things get a little questionable at times. Depends on how much money he's going to want too. Besides that, though, you need more help. Now, Roman Wilson, I'm excited for him to get back on the football field. Okay, I think he's going to be a huge boost for this football team, and I think he's going to be a guy that gives them at least a nice, reliable route-running weapon in the slot, but I do think he can play on the outside as well, so he's not going to be a confined slot guy. I'm very much optimistic in Roman Wilson. His development is going to be key for this wide receiving room. They need him. Now, Calvin Austin was pretty good this season. I'll be admit, I didn't expect that, but he was pretty dang solid this year. So he's certainly a guy that could be a nice little slot weapon for them. Van Jefferson, I don't think he's going to test the market. Mike Williams, probably going to test the market, but I'm okay bringing back Mike. He was solid in spurts and somebody that, maybe with another season with Arthur Smith, he develops a little bit more in their system and gets better. I'm okay bringing him back, but it's going to have to be for the right price. Ben Skoranek, you want to bring him back, good special teamer. Scotty Miller, I'm okay bringing him back as well. We'll see what they end up doing. Maybe they bring back one of those guys. I'd lean towards Skoranek in that department. Overall, we're going to need to add somebody in the draft, free agency, etc. This is a big need for this team. Onto the running back room, Najee Harris, the bulldozer. I love watching Najee Harris. After, though, the fifth-year contract and turning that down, I lean towards they're probably going to let him go. He's a good football player. Is he an elite running back? Is he somebody that I'm looking to pay $7, $8+ million? And that's probably going to be his market. Like, if I had to guess, $7 to $10 million range, that to me is tough because I want to bring back Jaylen Warren as well. And he's probably going to get that second-round tender. He's a restricted free agent. That's $5.2 million projected this season. So bringing him back plus Najee Harris could be like $15 million. That might just be a little bit too much to pay. So they're going to have to make that decision. Do you bring back Jaylen Warren? Do you bring back Najee Harris? I lean towards Warren. That's just my opinion. But Harris is a good player, and I respect, everything that he's done. I mean, he's a very consistent running back. He's been a reliable running back, too. And that's another thing. At the running back position, it's hard to find that all the time. Cordell Patterson could be a cut casualty after this season, just unfortunately not quite the special team kick returner that they were hoping for. So they could refine somebody, too, to help in that regard. They're going to need some more help in this. Between the draft free agency, we'll be looking at adding a running back, and it's a good class to do that. Okie dokie. It's unlimited time. It's Russell Wilson, Justin Fields conversation. What do you do? This is one that I was bouncing my head over and over again. I was hitting myself with this terrible towel. Like, come on, what do I do? And ultimately, when we get into free agency, I think you keep Justin Fields. You let Russell Wilson go. Russell Wilson, like if they had more weapons, if they felt good about the receiving room, if they were more like a win now, which this team's always in a win now scenario, Wilson, to me, is a better quarterback than Justin Fields. However, there are times where having that mobility is going to be a problem for that lack of mobility with Russell Wilson showed up. So I lean towards going Justin Fields, bringing that youth around. If I'm going to pay one of these guys, like Fields is probably going to be more like 5 to 10 million range, whereas Russell's going to be more like 15 to 20. So do I feel like that Russell Wilson's worth that extra pay scale, especially with the way things ended that season and some of the struggles there? I'm not confident in either, but I do like Justin Fields, and with that youth and development, I think that makes a lot more sense to bring him back. I still am going to be looking at drafting a quarterback, though. I think on day 2, early day 3, makes a lot of sense to be like a developmental quarterback to get somebody in the room. Hopefully that, at least adds more competition with Justin Fields or somebody you bring in free agency if you let go both of those guys go. Let's transition to the defense, which is head up by Terrell Austin, the DC. And we'll talk more about the defense coordinator because that's the one thing with Terrell Austin. Maybe they move on from him this offseason, but I expect them to give him another year going into year number 3 for him as a defensive coordinator. Overall, though, let's start with the interior of this defensive line. And Larry Ogunjobi is more than likely a cut candidate. You can save $7 million. It does make sense. The play, to me, at this point, I don't know if it's justified. You can probably find somebody else that gives you a little more upside on their room. Not to say Larry's a bad player or anything like that, but I do think that they can spend some of that money elsewhere. Keanu Benton, great player. I wouldn't mind them adding more of a big guy on that interior, like Keanu Benton rush the passer a little bit more, but ultimately we'll see what they want to do with their scheme. Benton can give you inside-out versatility, and I love the way he's played. Cameron Hayward's a stud. We don't need to talk about that. He's one of the best players in the NFL on and off the field. I mean, it's not just on the field. He's a remarkable dude, and what he does for the Pittsburgh Steelers is just, you can't value that. And he's on the field a wrecking machine. Let's just put it that way. And still, at his age, what is he, 35, 36 at this point? He's still unbelievable. So the depth here is going to be the big question. Dean Lowry's another guy that they could move on from. They save a little bit of money, like $2.4 million, I believe. You got Montrevious Adams, solid interior rusher, nose tackle. He kind of heads up against the nose a lot of times as a small sub-package rusher. Isaiah Loudermilk, depth player. Maybe they bring him back on the cheap. I wouldn't expect to be super expensive. DeMarvin Leal, maybe when he gets healthy, would be a rotation in this room. I would be looking at just somebody between free agency and the draft. They could use some depth here. It's a sneaky need, and especially with Pittsburgh Steelers valuing their defensive line, like it wouldn't shock me if they went defensive line in the first round. I think this is like either you go at one early in the draft or you get somebody in free agency, get some depth later in the draft sort of scenario. Let's maneuver to the edge room, which is one of the best in the NFL. I mean, this is 3D. Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt. This is a really good room. Now, Preston Smith, another guy that's probably going to get cut this offseason. You're just going to save that money. So they need a little bit more depth. You got Jeremiah Moon. He's a exclusive restricted free agent. He'll be back. I will be looking at some more depth. I think it's more of a free agency type of play. I mean, you could look at it in the draft too. It's a good edge rushing room class. So maybe pick up somebody in the 4th, 5th round. I certainly wouldn't hate that. Between free agency and the draft, pick up one more guy to be your 4th rotational dude. Besides that, this is not a huge need. Highsmith is under contract. Watt's under contract. Herbig's still on his rookie deal. They're in a really good position here. On to the linebacker position, which is a really fun room here. And it's one of the better emerging positions for the Pittsburgh Steelers after being such a weakness. Peyton Wilson looking great as a rookie. He's another draft pick that they hit on. So Omar Khan has had a really nice draft by the looks of it so far. And there's still a lot of hope that this draft can be even better. But I think with his emergence, Patrick Queen's under contract, some disappointment in my opinion, the green dot. I would actually like Colt Holcomb to be coming back as the green dot guy, or Eldon Roberts. Those guys bring the boom on that linebacker room. And I know he had that scary injury. What was it? The Titans game in this past season, not this year, but the last season. I'm rooting for him, man. He is a good, tenacious football player. He's not your coverage guy, but I think Queen and Wilson can answer the bell in those regards. Those guys have more of those speed and range to do that. Whereas if you bring back Roberts, which he's already said he wants to come back, so I don't think he'll be super expensive, somewhere like $3 to $5 million range, and they have the money to do that. I would keep him. He's a good, if nothing else, as a rotational thumper, he's really good. He's a really good run defender. So keeping him around, I think makes a lot of sense. I would keep Cole Holcomb. I keep seeing, cut Cole Holcomb. Personally, I'd keep him. I understand that injury is tough. I love what he brings to the table, and I think he's a really good linebacker when he's on the football field. What I saw from him at Washington, and even when he was playing for Pittsburgh last season, man, he's a good football player. So I would keep him around. I just don't think he's worth cutting for $6 million. I really don't. And I would love the comeback story, man. I'm a sucker for a good comeback story. I think Holcomb's going to be really, fierce to get back on the football field next season. And this linebacking room between Holcomb, Roberts, Queen, and Wilson, like if you keep those 4 guys, like that's a really good room with a lot of versatile skill sets. Woo, man, that linebacker room got me hyped up. But let's go ahead and calm down. Let's go on to the cornerback room. This area needs to come not a complete overhaul, but it needs to be overhauled in my opinion. Joey Porter Jr., he's a grabby machine. You're going to have some limitations with Porter, but he is a solid one-on-one cover man, and he's under that rookie contract. And corner is another fluctual position as well, right? It's a volatile position. I expect him to have hopefully a bounce back season, but you got to get better in this cornerback room. Dante Jackson, he was pretty dang good. He made a lot of plays for them throughout the season. So if they did want to bring him back, I'm okay with that. I do question that, like long-term, I still want to try to find the answers here, right? Rather than just doing one-year deals, hopefully you can find more future-proof with this. And Dante Jackson, also a little injury-prone, and when he did get injured, it was a bit of a drop-off at the end of the season, I felt like, when he was dealing with some back stuff, etc. So we'll see how it comes along with Dante Jackson. I'm not against bringing him back, but at the same time, especially with the way that he ended the season, that makes it a little bit challenging and a question mark going forward. Corey Trice, good, let's keep an eye on Corey Trice. I like him. Purdue, boiler up, let's go. And certainly a guy that has a chance to be a starter for them next season. I'm going to be adding. No matter what, I think that you need to add to this room. And then slot cornerback, Beanie Bishop, really good player, man. West Virginia, they found some West Virginia studs out here. He's been a really good playmaker for them. I see him as a great dime backer for them. Even, I would be looking at adding somebody else in the slot room, right? Because I don't know if he does have some limitations, especially as a tackler. He's not the biggest guy or most ferocious guy, but he's a great cover man. And that's why I like him a ton as like a dime back or situational sub-package guy. So just getting him with somebody else in that room, adding some competition at least, is going to be a priority for me. Let's go on to the safety room. And I know you're going to be like, what? Minkah Fitzpatrick's rated lower than Deshaun Elliott, the Joker? You must be joking. No, man, I'm telling you, Deshaun Elliott had a good season. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I didn't see a whole ton of him this year. I mean, he made some plays here and there. I do think it was a little bit of a down year for Minkah. Once again, safety position, cornerback position are a little volatile. And teams will also know it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, so they don't always throw his way. Deshaun Elliott had a great season, though. He really good signing there by Omar Khan, and he's really outperformed that contract. He is still undergoing contract for one more season, but I will say you're going to need to draft somebody here. This is like a mid-round pick for the future. Minkah Fitzpatrick, you could even move, like if he has another down year next year, maybe you say he's not worth that $24 million or whatever cap hit that he is going into 2026. You could save like $20 million by moving on from him next year. I'm not saying you do that, but it is an option. So I will be drafting somebody, Elliott being a free agent in 2026. Let's get a guy in here to develop, at least get some more depth. KZ is a free agent. Maybe just try to get a little younger. And not that KZ is a bad player. They could bring him back on the cheap. I just think it makes sense to get a little bit younger. You got Miles Killebrew, a great special teamer and whatnot. Overall, that's going to be my view. A mid-round pick to get some developmental guy in the room. It's time to go on to free agency, though. And let's start off with the team cuts. I had to make a couple of tough decisions. Preston Smith, I think, makes the most sense here, first and foremost. Him and Larry Ogunjobi, let's go ahead and move off their contract. That's almost $20 million in save. And they already have $48 million, but now they get up to 73 and some change with Patterson and Lowry as well. Those are some more depth cuts. Lowry, I'm on the fence on maybe they keep him, maybe they don't. Solid rotational guy. However, I just feel like with the $2.5 million, we can go out and sign some help. With Larry Ogunjobi, between those two guys, that's almost $10 million we can then spend on an interior player and get somebody in the draft to be some developmental, get a little younger there too. So that's kind of what I decided to do with letting go of some of these players. Definitely let me know, do you agree or do you disagree with letting some of those? Would you let go of different guys? I wanted to keep Cole Holcomb. I really did. I could talk about it earlier. I'm a sucker for that comeback story, and I really do like Cole Holcomb, what he brings to the table as that, mean mugger in the interior or on the inside. Him and Roberts, I think that'd be a really good group. Speaking of Roberts, we'll bring him back with the team re-signs. Let's start with the offense, though. I decided to bring back Justin Fields. I went for the younger route. Justin Fields also the cheaper route, I feel like, than Russell Wilson. Wilson's probably going to be more in that 15 to 20 ballpark. Fields more in that 5 to 10. I went $7 million, kind of went in for that medium middle portion, $7 to $8 million range. And just think, hey, let's go ahead and give him another chance. We're going to be looking at drafting a guy too to develop. And then besides that, I do let go of Najee Harris. Had to make a tough decision, but I gave the second round tender in this regard, which is taken in that practice squad, restricted free agents. That's what that budget is. So when you don't see Jaylen Warren on here, that budget comes from that $8 million. So 5 of that is from him. Plus, you got a couple of million for some other players that are exclusive restricted free agents as well, such as guys like Jeremiah Moon. And then besides that, we bring back Mike Williams. 1 year, $3 million. I felt like it was worth it, especially as long as it's a cheap contract. Let's say no more than like $4 million. I'm okay with that, bringing Mike back for that type of contract. Ben Skoranek, bring him back on the cheap. Shouldn't be expensive. Calvin Anderson, we'll bring him back as some swing tackle ability. Nate Herbig, I decided to bring him back. Once again, you got the Herbig brothers, so keeping him around, getting him healthy is going to be a nice addition for him as a swing interior player. He has versatility to play center or guard. And then on the defense side of the ball, Isaiah Loudermilk, I just went ahead and brought him back. I mean, I didn't see a ton of him this season, but as a good rotational player, I'm fine with that. Eldon Roberts, bring him back. I like what he brings to the table. $4 million. He shouldn't be super expensive, especially if he wants to stay in town. He was 3.5 on the cap last year, so something around that. Gave him a little bit of a boost. I thought that was fair. Tyler Medovich, I brought him back as a special team. Maybe they let him go at this point. Maybe they want to get a little younger. You got Mark Robinson, who can be that long-term special teamer. He's kind of stepped up in that role too, but I just brought him back because maybe, you always keep your special team. That's fine. I have no problems with that. Now, I did let go of all their secondary pieces here. I could see them bringing back James Pierre. He's a solid player. Somebody can be a rotational dude. I just felt like, let's get a little younger. Let's get a little more, dynamic, I guess. I don't know. Pierre is a solid player, though, and certainly somebody I have no problem bringing back. Same thing with Dante Jackson. As I talked about earlier, if they want to keep Dante Jackson, I'm okay with that, but I have something else in mind. Speaking of which, we'll go ahead and talk about those outside free agent signings. I'm going to bring Jeremy McNichols in from Washington. He had a nice season, and he might get a chance to be more of a number 2 elsewhere, which for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe Arthur Smith has a little bit of familiarity going back to Tennessee with Jeremy McNichols, I believe. I don't know. That's a good question. Was McNichols around there? I'd have to go back and take a look at that, but he was with Tennessee for a couple of years, so maybe they have a little bit of chemistry overall. I'm just bringing him in on a cheap 1-year deal to be a number 2 guy with Jaylen Warren, at least early on. Jake Curran for coming over here from Seattle as a swing tackle, right tackle, give them a little bit of depth there. And then defensively, we bring in Lorenzo Carter as a nice 4th edge rusher, 1 year, $4 million. Just keep up that depth, right? It's cheaper than Preston Smith as well, so trying to get a little cheaper, and then also keeping that depth up is important. Then we go on to Levi Onwuzurike. You're like, woo, it's an interesting signing right here. But I decided to go free agency route rather than draft in terms of the interior of the defensive line. I could see them going after the draft portion of this and picking up a Kenneth Grant or whatever, right? Maybe a Walter Nolan, etc. However, I felt like Levi Onwuzurike has had a nice season for the Detroit Lions. He's gotten healthy. And for 2 years, $24 million, $12 million average. I think it makes a lot of sense to bring him in there with Keanu Benton and Cameron Hayward to stunt out that interior of that defense line. You got Leal as your rotational player, Isaiah Loudermilk as well. We can also look at drafting somebody, maybe another big guy in there. And then DJ Reed from the Jets. I'm a Jets fan. You're getting a really good football player. Let me just tell you. 2 years, $30 million. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he's still got a couple of good seasons left in DJ Reed. He's a good football player. I know he had a bit of a down year, but that Jets secondary in general had a down year after the level of Robert Saleh. Everything just went to poo-poo. But Reed is a really good football player. Trust me on that. He's a great football player, and he's a tough guy. He is. He's small, but he is tough. He plays like he's a 6'1" guy. So getting in a guy on the outside, DJ Reed, it's like I talk about, it's a tough call. Him and Dante Jackson, I went ahead and went DJ Reed. He's also been a really reliable player, too, for the Jets. So I went that route and get somebody else besides Joey Porter Jr. on the outside. Marcus May, going to get some more depth, $1.5 million, good rotational safety filling in there, and that veteran presence. And then I budgeted $8 million, but $79 million range for their draft picks. Let's go ahead and spotlight the draft needs. Once more, we're going to get into it. Offensive line, I'll be looking at drafting maybe an interior player like a left guard to develop behind Isaac Samalo, Spencer Anderson. Just get a little bit more developmental guys in the room. Maybe a late round throw. It's probably a day 3 need at this point. Wide receiver, still an early need. First, second round, latest third round, I'll be looking at adding. I know we didn't add anybody in free agency. They do have $10 million, so they could still go out and spend a little bit of money. You pick up a veteran, pick up a DeAndre Hopkins, etc. I just lean towards not. I'm going to go out in the draft. A lot of times when it comes to receivers, I lean towards drafting a guy, so I'm going to probably end up doing that. Tight end, maybe it's a late round depth position type of need, so we'll get a little bit more depth there at the end of the draft. Not a huge need. Running back, I'll be looking at day 2, early day 3. I'm not highly I think Warren can step in and be the number 1 guy. We got McNichols to be a number 2 early on, but no matter what, we're going to need that second, third guy as we go into the offseason. So I'm going to be looking at like round 3, round 4. I think there's a really good sweet spot there to get a good running back. And same thing with quarterback. I think there's a sweet spot in this draft class, like 2nd through 4th round, to get a solid developmental quarterback that we can get behind Justin Fields, at least add more competition. And then on the defense side of the ball, defensive line, I'll add some more interior defensive line depth somewhere in day 3. I don't think it's a huge priority with the studs that we have at this point. I'm going to add like another big guy, maybe another like hybrid nose tackle for them. Edge-wise, I don't think this is a huge need. I mean, I think they're in a really good spot. We got our rotation of 4. You got Jeremiah Moon, too, can continue to develop, Thomas Rush, etc. Not a huge need. It's always an area you can look at, though, in the draft. We'll see how things go with the amount of picks they have and etc. Linebacker, not a need. They're in a really good position there. Cornerback-wise, I'm still going to be looking at a corner. I'm going to be looking to upgrade this room even more, so we'll keep TBD on that. And then safety-wise, we'll be looking at drafting somebody maybe between like that 3rd to 4th, 5th round range as a developmental safety. I think that makes a lot of sense. Hey, I said TBD. It wasn't long. We got to go in here. Let's go. It's draft time. And with our first pick at 21, Jahdae Barron, the cornerback, Texas. Hook 'em horns, baby. Let's go. He's going to be another stud in this secondary. I mean, this is something, I'm just trying to finish this secondary. Kind of do what like the Detroit Lions did. They got somebody in free agency. They ended up spending their 1st and a 2nd round pick on that. We're trying to address this secondary position once and for all, nip it in the bud. Let's get a good secondary. Jahdae Barron's going to come in here and help out this room. He gives you outside versatility, inside versatility. I think you plug him in right to the slot. You got Beanie Bishop as your dime backer. Barron is your full-time starter in the slot. And then on the outside, Porter and Reed. That is a fantastic corner. And Corey Trice. I mean, Corey Trice is going to be your outside backup, your 3rd guy for injuries, right? He's going to be a great number 3 behind those dudes. So that's a really, really good cornerback room, something you can build upon. And Jahdae Barron's going to get some interceptions. Obviously, you got a really good pass rush. Let's get playmakers in the room. Jahdae Barron's going to be able to do that for this football team. On to round number 2, Alec Mena. And he is going to bring the manner to the wide receiving room. He is a tough nose blocker, right? You talk about a little bit of the opposite of George Pickens, right? And you say, oh, George Pickens, we want a little bit more toughness there. Oh, IU Manor is going to give you that toughness on the outside. He is a tough nose blocker. Stanford knows how to teach some blocking out there. I'll tell you that right now. But IU Manor has got tremendous size, tremendous athleticism. Now, the route running still needs to come along, but I see IU Manor as a developmental more as a George Pickens, somebody you can let him develop on the outside there. Hopefully, Roman Wilson comes along, plays a little inside-out versatility. You got Calvin Austin, Mike Williams we had and brought back, but IU Manor as that outside vertical guy, that makes a lot of sense for them as that long-term George Pickens replacement, especially if, again, those off-the-field things. We'll see what they want to do with George Pickens. No matter what, Alec IU Manor adds another outside vertical weapon for this football team. On to round number 3. We're going quarterback. Will Howard, the Ohio State man. We'll see. He may be a national champion here in a little bit, but Will Howard has a really good developmental traits. He's got great size. He's got good arm talent too. And I think he's really improved his pocket ability. I mean, he's a good athlete as well. I mean, he's a sneaky athlete, I believe it or not. I mean, I was a little surprised. He's got some sneakiness there. I mean, even going back to Kansas State, he was a good runner. However, he showed off his wheels at times for the Buckeyes this season in critical points. But yeah, he needs to improve his mechanics a little bit. His accuracy at times can be a little wavering. And his decision-making at times isn't always perfect. But I think he'd be a great, great developmental guy. He's hung in there tough under pressure. And somebody, like I talk about, round 3, with those traits that he has, he could be a sneaky little developmental quarterback for them. So I'm taking a shot here on Will Howard. This is a guy I did not expect to come out in the draft, but Trevor Etienne, Georgia, he just recently declared. So let's take a chance on him. I could talk about this. Say there's some really solid running backs in this class you can get on day 3 even. I mean, guys like Trevor Etienne, Jarquez Hunter, Devin Neal, etc. You name it. There are some guys that are going to be some steals. So we're going to go get Trevor Etienne. He's just a really, really solid running back. His skill set is very versatile. He's got low tread on the tires as well. So is that number 3 running back early on, like behind Nichols and Warren? I love it, man. Etienne going to work his way into maybe the long-term starter for this football team. He's got all the ability to do that. I mean, he's a solid athlete. I don't think he's as good as his brother in terms of his athleticism, but I do think he's got some solid power to his game and could be a really, really nice runner with his vision and everything like that. Very, very good vision, Trevor Etienne. On to round number 5, we're going with Malachi Moore, the versatile safety. I actually like him a lot at safety position, which where they're playing more at Alabama this season. He was very, very good this year, and I feel like he's being a little underrated at this point. He's gone from all over the spectrum. Like, he was once hyped up to being a first-round prospect to a UDFA prospect. It's been all over the board. I think he's more of that mid-round guy now at this point. Malachi Moore coming off a really good season. He's a solid athlete, not an elite athlete. He's more of a, that's why I say, I don't know if I want to put him up in the slot as a shifty corner, shifty wide receivers can get the best of him. But as a safety, somebody that can come down to the box too, he's a tough-nosed guy. I like what he brings to the table. Get you some developmental guys behind Minkah Fitzpatrick and the Joker, Deshaun Elliott. To our first 7th-round pick, one of my guys in the class, the Michigan State Spartan, formerly of Holy Cross, transferred over. He was a tackle there. Luke Newman. I like this guy a lot. He's underrated, in my opinion. And I fully expect this guy to make the roster, compete for a starting position, and maybe at some point he could end up being a plus starter for a team. This guy's got quick feet. And I love the way he plays with this. He's an aggressive puncher. He takes the fight to defensive linemen, which you got to do, man. You got to really do. So he might have some limitations. He's not, maybe the longest guy or anything like that. But I mean, he's fine. Obviously, I don't think he's a tackle. I see him as a guard, which is where Michigan State played him. Anyway, I like what he brings to the table with his aggressiveness, his quick feet, and somebody that can be a great developmental piece. Yeah, he's going to have to get a little bit better with his hand placement. I do think his base gets a little narrow at times. Overall, really, really solid developmental. To our next 7th-round pick, Nash Hutchmacher from Nebraska. He's another big fella on the interior from Nebraska. Get you a little one-tech zero, somebody that can give you some more depth on that interior for Keanu Benton, etc. And that's really what this is. All right, just a little more depth at the end of the draft. He's a strong guy and hopefully can just provide a little spark there at the end of the draft as a good run defender. Final pick of the draft, Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech. He's got size. He's got some vertical or linear burst. I'll tell you that right now. He's a good athlete for his size, especially. Needs to work on his blocking, especially for his size. I think he'd be a tougher blocker than that. Anyway, get you a little bit more depth at the tight end room at the end of the draft. Well, let's go ahead and recap everything up that we did in the draft. Talk about coaching real quick, which the only coaching change I would consider making is Terrell Austin, defensive coordinator. We'll see what happens, okay? That's something that I definitely could see them making a change, but at this point, maybe, maybe not, okay? It's going to be a very, very tough call. Overall, though, Arthur Smith, give him another season, unless he gets a head coaching job somewhere else. I know he's got some interviews. I expect him to be the offensive coordinator going into this next season for Pittsburgh, at least getting another season, and then maybe next year he possibly gets another head coaching gig. Mike Tomlin, many conversations around Mike Tomlin. I would not let go of Mike Tomlin. I get it. You've lost, 5, 6 straight playoff games or whatever. It's just, he's a good coach. He really is a good coach. He's a player's guy. In the alternative, I mean, I've seen this before. People, they'll say, oh, Andy Reid, Philadelphia Eagles, he can't win the big one. He can't win playoff games. Let's let him go. You've seen this over and over and over again. I can't do it. I just cannot do that. I think Mike Tomlin's a good head football coach, and I'm keeping him around. There's some other, quarterback stability has been a problem for this team, and what they've had to work with, I think he's done a very formidable job. I'm not letting him go. So that's where I'm at. And then you got Omar Khan as the GM. I'm fine with him too as the GM. I think he's done a solid job. Some free agency misses here and there, but everybody has some. Let's talk about what we did, though, in this draft and talk about what I think that they really need to be focusing on in general. There's so many different approaches, right? This is not a blueprint on what exactly they have to do. This is kind of what I feel and some of the areas that they need to really focus on, such as the receiver position, right? That is a top priority. Did we do enough? That's a good question. Maybe we should have signed somebody in free agency. I would have felt a little bit better about that, but we did draft Alec Manor in the second round. Roman Wilson's going to be a whole nother day 2 pick, getting him back healthy, and I still like what he brings to the table, and I think he's going to be a really good football player. So Roman Wilson, Alec Manor, you brought back Mike on the cheap, Calvin Austin, George Pickens still around for maybe one more season. We'll see. Anyway, you've got, 5, 6 guys there. Ben Skoranek as well. So you've got some guys that I feel good about. It should elevate this receiving room. Just getting healthy is going to be huge. Tight end wise, you just add in some depth, Jalen Conyers. I don't think that's really all they need to do. Running back wise, we had in Trevor Etienne. He's going to be a really another, that third running back with Jeremy McNichols and Jalen Warren. I think Warren can step up and be the starter for them next season, but Etienne's going to be a great developmental third guy and ultimately maybe that long-term starter. Quarterback, hey, we're taking a shot. I think day 2 makes a lot of sense to go get a quarterback to be able to develop. Bring Justin Fields back. I think he'll be cheaper than Russell Wilson and also gives you more dynamicism with his legs. Continue to see what you have there with Justin Fields if he can be the franchise quarterback. By selecting Will Howard, it doesn't say that Fields can't be the guy either, but it does add more competition in the room. Offense, we mainly went the veteran approach and added some guys there. Jay Curran, maybe, you add somebody else in free agency as a swing tackle instead of Calvin Anderson, but I brought back Anderson. And then we drafted Luke Newman to be another developmental interior player at that left guard position. So that's kind of my approach here. Wide receiver, find a developmental quarterback, get a running back in here. Those are the kind of the top priorities. Defensively wise, I focused in on that secondary, improving the secondary, which I feel like we did tremendously. Some people say Jadair Barron is going to be a little bit of a reach. I think he's a stud, man. He's going to be a dynamic playmaker. He's going to be a ferocious guy in the slot there. And inside-out versatility, I think he's a perfect scheme fit with what they like to do here in Pittsburgh as well. Joey Porter Jr., Jadair Barron, DJ Reed, Beanie Bishop as that dime backer, rotational player. Corey Trice as your swing corner on the outside. That's a great group of 5 corners right there. I'm pumped up to see that. And then in the back end, too, we add in Malachi Moore, good developmental safety for them with Deshaun Elliott going to a contract year. Minka Fitzpatrick getting a little expensive, especially if he has maybe another down year. You could look at that. Marcus May as a backup there as a third, fourth guy. We didn't do anything at linebacker, just brought back Cole Holcomb. I think that's a really good idea to bring him back. Same thing with Eldon Roberts. Those 2 guys, really good run defenders, leaders. Queen Wilson is your more athletic, dynamic, pass effectors there. And then on the defensive line, we just brought in a little bit of depth, and we brought in Levi Unzurike in free agency. I went the free agency route. Once again, I could see them going in the draft a little bit earlier. Maybe a Kenny Grant could be a possibility too for them. Add a big guy. Benton could be more of a packet, be more of a rusher too in that case. Multiple options that I talk about. I just kind of like this approach. Levi Unzurike, you got a little bit of depth there with Loudermilk Leal. We brought in Hutchmacher as a good rotational, nose one tech for them as a run defender. So that's going to do it here for the Pittsburgh Steelers mock draft offseason breakdown. Let me know what you think, Steelers fans. Let's get those terrible shirts going, terrible towels going. And I hope you guys have a cool end day.